I don't even know where to start, but I need to get this off my chest before I explode. My sister Olivia has been the golden child in our family for as long as I can remember. She's the loud, charismatic, center of attention type. And she knows exactly how to manipulate our parents into believing whatever comes out of her mouth. I, on the other hand, have spent my entire life being blamed for everything that goes wrong, whether I had anything to do with it or not. This vacation was supposed to be different. I planned it down to the last detail: flights, hotel activities, everything. And yet, somehow, as always, Olivia found a way to make me the villain. It started at dinner on our first night. We arrived at the restaurant I booked weeks in advance, only for the hostess to inform us that there was no reservation under my name. Cue Olivia's dramatic gasp. "Wow, Madison. You forgot to confirm? Again?" she said, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. I was confused. I knew I booked it. I even had the confirmation email. But before I could pull it up, my mother let out a disappointed sigh. "Madison, how could you? You knew how much we were looking forward to this." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Olivia was already rolling her eyes, smirking at me like she knew she'd won. "This is just like the time she lost our ski lodge booking, remember, Mom?" "Of course I remember," Mom said, as if I had personally burned the reservation confirmation in front of her eyes. "Madison, you need to be more responsible." Meanwhile, my dad? He just sipped his drink in silence, probably praying he could disappear into the linen tablecloth. And just like that, I was officially the villain of the trip. We had to wait an hour for a new table, during which Olivia entertained the family with exaggerated stories of all the times I'd supposedly ruined things in the past. I sat there stewing in silence because arguing would only make me look worse. But the thing is, I knew I didn't mess up the reservation. Something was off, and I was going to find out what. So, after being blamed for the missing dinner reservation on the first night of our vacation, I spent the rest of the evening fuming. Not just because Olivia had thrown me under the bus again, but because I knew I wasn't wrong. I had proof, I just hadn't gotten the chance to show it. But what pissed me off the most? How effortless it was for Olivia to manipulate the situation. It's like she has this built-in superpower where she can twist reality, and everyone just believes her. She could probably set the hotel on fire and still convince my parents it was my fault for not warning her that flames are hot. And the worst part? She doesn't need to be like this. She's beautiful, charming, and has always had everything handed to her. She's the type of person who could talk her way out of a murder charge while convincing the jury to apologize for wasting her time. I, on the other hand, have always been the responsible one, the planner, the fixer, the one who double-checks everything because I know that if anything goes wrong, I'll be blamed. And still, somehow, Olivia always wins. So fast forward to the next morning. Olivia had planned a snorkeling trip for us, and I was determined to keep a low profile. If I just stayed quiet and went along with everything, maybe, just maybe, I could get through this trip without being publicly executed for a crime I didn't commit. Except, of course, fate, or Olivia, wasn't about to let that happen. We got to the dock, and the tour operator greeted us with a sheepish smile. "So, bad news. The boat's having some mechanical issues. We're gonna be delayed for a couple of hours." Before I could even process what was happening, Olivia sighed dramatically and turned to our parents. "Ugh, this is so typical. Honestly, we should have known Madison would curse this too." "I cursed it?" I blinked at her, wondering if I had just entered an alternate dimension where I had secretly been a boat mechanic this whole time. How the hell was this my fault? "Oh, come on, Olivia," I said, trying to laugh it off. "How is this my fault?" Olivia gave me one of those sickly sweet smiles, the kind that looks friendly but is actually just an excuse to be an asshole. "Oh, I don't know, Maddie. Maybe you have some kind of anti-vacation energy. First dinner, now this. Just saying." Mom sighed, shaking her head like I had somehow willed the boat to break down. "Madison, can you at least try to be more prepared?" Prepared? What was I supposed to do? Bring a backup boat? Manifest an alternate reality where the engine magically worked? And of course, Dad. Silent. Probably counting the seconds until he could go back to ignoring this entire situation. At this point I had two options. 1. Play along, nod, and accept my fate as the family scapegoat. 2. Burn this entire vacation to the ground. I chose option 3, bide my time. Because something about Olivia's smugness over the dinner situation was still bugging me. The way she was so sure it was my fault, the way she kept bringing it up, something wasn't right. So later that night, when everyone else was busy drinking by the pool, I decided to do a little digging. I pulled up my email, found the original confirmation for the dinner reservation, and just on a hunch, I scrolled through my text history with Olivia. And that's when I found it. A message from her sent 2 weeks ago. "Hey Maddie, what's the name of the restaurant again? Just making sure we're good." At the time I hadn't thought anything of it. I had sent her the name, assuming she just wanted to check the menu or something. But then I noticed something weird. The restaurant's name was in blue, like a hyperlink, like she had forwarded it. And that's when my stomach dropped. I had no proof yet, but I was pretty damn sure Olivia had canceled that reservation herself. And she let me take the fall for it. So there I was sitting on my hotel bed, staring at my phone screen, heart racing. The dinner reservation hadn't disappeared into thin air. Olivia had done something. I just didn't know what yet. And I knew that if I confronted her without solid proof, she'd spin it around like she always did, make me look paranoid, and somehow turn it into my fault for even asking. I needed more. I started scrolling through my texts again, looking for anything I might have missed. And then I saw it. An old message from Olivia to Mom, sent right after she had asked me for the restaurant name. Ugh, Madison picked that place? I looked it up and the reviews are terrible. Maybe we should go somewhere else? Let me handle it. Bingo. I didn't have direct proof that she canceled the reservation, but I had enough to know that she had at least tried to change things behind my back. And knowing Olivia, she wouldn't have just let it go. Before I could decide my next move, my mom knocked on my door. "Madison, sweetheart, can we talk?" I sighed, shoving my phone under my pillow. "Sure, Mom." She sat on the edge of my bed with that look. The one she always gave me right before she told me to just be the bigger person and let Olivia get away with whatever crap she pulled. I don't want this trip to be ruined by tension between you and your sister," she said. "I know Olivia can be a bit much sometimes, but she means well." "Did she, though?" Mom patted my knee. "Can't you just let this go? You know Olivia doesn't hold grudges like you do." That part made me want to scream. Olivia didn't need to hold grudges, because she never lost anything. She steamrolled through life, made messes, and left me to clean them up. But instead of arguing, I just smiled and said, "Of course, Mom. I'll let it go." I wasn't, obviously, but I was going to play nice for now. The next morning we had another excursion planned. A snorkeling trip that Olivia had arranged. After yesterday's boat issue, which, reminder, was somehow also my fault, she was in a fantastic mood, because it meant she got to be the hero for organizing a second chance at the experience. We got to the dock, and I'll give Olivia credit. She really committed to playing tour guide, even dramatically waving at the boat crew like she was some kind of VIP. Except there was a problem. The guy running the trip looked stressed. Folks, we're really sorry, but there's been a delay," he said, scratching his head. "The boat had some mechanical issues this morning, and we're waiting on clearance before we can head out." I barely had time to register that before Olivia turned right to me with a dramatic sigh. "Wow, Madison. Another one." I blinked. "I what?" She crossed her arms, shaking her head like she pitied me. "First the dinner reservation, now the boat. Maybe you are cursed." I laughed. Like an actual disbelieving laugh. "You think this is my fault? Are you serious?" Olivia shrugged, but I could see the satisfaction in her face. "I mean, I planned this one, and everything was perfect until you showed up." My mom sighed. "Madison, just don't react. Don't react." That was my family's favorite way of telling me to just let Olivia get away with being an insufferable brat. And for the first time in my life, I didn't listen. I turned to my dad, who, shocker, hadn't said a single word this entire time. "Dad," I said, crossing my arms, "do you think I somehow broke the boat? Or are you just going to sit there quietly like always?" He stiffened, clearly uncomfortable, but of course he said nothing. And that was the moment I realized something. They weren't silent because they didn't know Olivia was full of crap. They were silent because it was easier to let her get away with it. That realization made something shift in me. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to win. Because I had proof. And at dinner that night, I was going to use it. By the time we got to dinner that night, I had made up my mind. I was done playing the role of the quiet, reasonable one. Olivia had spent years throwing me under the bus, and tonight? She was getting run over by it. We were at some fancy oceanside restaurant, the kind where they charge you $40 for a plate the size of a coaster. Olivia was still riding the high of making me the butt of her jokes all day, and Mom was sipping her wine like she didn't just let her favorite daughter humiliate me for sport. Dad, as usual, remained silent, probably praying for the sweet release of death before dessert. I was waiting for my moment, and I didn't have to wait long. As soon as we sat down, Olivia stretched dramatically and smirked at me. "Hey, Madison," she said, tilting her head like she wasn't about to be an absolute menace. "Are you sure you didn't mess up this reservation too?" Mom laughed, like it was actually funny. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. "You know what, Olivia? I was actually thinking about that." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my messages. Because I know I booked that dinner. And I know I didn't mess up the reservation. And weirdly enough, I turned my phone so she could see the screen. I found this. The table went dead silent. Because displayed on my phone was a text message from Olivia, 2 weeks ago, asking me for the name of the restaurant. Her eyes flickered to it for half a second before she scoffed. "So what? I asked you for the name. What's your point?" I smiled. "My point is, when you forwarded that message, you made it a hyperlink." The smirk on her face twitched, just barely. But I saw it. Mom frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means Olivia didn't just ask me for the restaurant name," I said. "She sent it to someone else, probably the restaurant itself." I scrolled up to show the rest of the messages. And then an hour later, she texted Mom saying she'd handle it. "So, Olivia, since you were so eager to take responsibility, why don't you tell us what happened?" The color drained from her face. She knew she was caught. Dad finally spoke. "Olivia, did you cancel the reservation?" For a split second, Olivia just stared at me. And then she did what she does best, she tried to spin it. "Oh my God, you're so dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. "I didn't cancel it, I thought the restaurant sucked, so I tried to change it. But obviously they messed it up." Mom turned to me like I was the problem. "Madison, you're making a big deal out of nothing." "No, Mom." My voice was sharp, and for the first time she actually flinched. "This isn't nothing. This is every single time Olivia screws me over, and you just let her." Olivia gasped dramatically. "Oh, give me a break, Maddie. It was a dinner reservation, not a murder plot." I laughed. A real genuine laugh. "Right. Just like it wasn't a big deal. When you blamed me for your lost homework in middle school? Or when you swore to Mom that I broke her vase even though I wasn't home? Or when you told my prom date I had a boyfriend so he'd take you instead?" Her eyes widened, because she thought I'd forgotten about that last one. "No, Olivia. You always do this. You screw me over, you lie, you make me the bad guy, and everyone just lets you because it's easier than calling you out. And I'm done letting it slide." The table was silent. Olivia's face had gone from shock to something I had never seen before. Panic. Even Dad, who usually let this stuff blow over, had his arms crossed like he was actually considering all the things I had just listed. "And Mom?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Olivia, is it true?" Olivia did not like that. "Oh my God, are you guys seriously taking Madison's side?" she shrieked, throwing her hands up. "It was a restaurant. She's making a huge deal out of nothing." "Because it's never just one thing," I snapped. "It's years of you treating me like garbage and getting away with it. And I'm done." I stood up, grabbing my bag. "You guys enjoy dinner. I think I've lost my appetite." And then I walked out. As I left the restaurant, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. I finally stood up for myself. And judging by the absolute chaos unfolding at that table, Olivia's reign as the family's untouchable golden child was officially over. After I walked out of the restaurant, I expected one of two things to happen. 1. Olivia would come storming out, screaming at me for embarrassing her. 2. Mom would follow, pleading with me to be reasonable and keep the peace. Neither happened. Instead, I found myself sitting alone on a bench outside, staring at the ocean waves while my heart pounded in my chest. I had finally done it. I had stood up for myself and it felt exhilarating, freeing. But at the same time I knew this wasn't over. Olivia never lost. And that's when I remembered something. The dinner reservation thing had bugged me from the start because I knew I had booked it. But I hadn't been able to prove Olivia canceled it, just that she had tried. So what if I could really prove it? I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my texts, opening the old message thread with Olivia. And that's when I noticed something I had overlooked before. At the very top of the thread, above all our messages, was a little gray notice. Messages with this contact are being stored in iCloud. Tap to view older messages. Older messages. My heart leapt into my throat. I tapped. And there, buried in an archive thread from weeks ago, was the text that changed everything. Olivia. OMG, I accidentally canceled the reservation, loudly crying face, but whatever. We can just blame Maddie, lol. I stared at it. Read it again. And then I laughed. A full disbelieving laugh. She had actually texted that. Like it was a joke. Like it was a game to her. She knew she could pin it on me. And she had done it without hesitation. And suddenly I wasn't just mad about the dinner reservation anymore. I was mad about everything. Every little moment of my life where Olivia had smiled sweetly, while throwing me under the bus. Every single time my parents had taken her side. Every, "Oh Madison, just let it go." And, "You know how Olivia is." That had kept me quiet. Not anymore. I took a screenshot. Then I sat there for a long time debating my next move. I could send it to the family group chat right now and watch Olivia implode. But would it even matter? Mom would probably still find a way to minimize it. Dad would stay silent. Olivia would just twist the narrative again. No. I needed something bigger. Something that Olivia couldn't talk her way out of. And I had the perfect opportunity. Tomorrow morning, we had one final family breakfast before we all went our separate ways. It was supposed to be a let's reflect on our wonderful trip meal. But for Olivia, it was about to be her reckoning. The next morning I woke up calm. Not the fake, forced kind of calm I'd had to adopt my whole life just to survive being Olivia's scapegoat. But a deep, settled calm. The kind that comes from knowing you're about to drop a bomb so big there's no coming back from it. I got dressed, packed my suitcase, and headed down to our final family breakfast, where I already knew exactly how this was going to go. Mom was already seated, sipping her coffee like last night hadn't happened. Dad, predictably, had his face buried in a newspaper, pretending we were a normal, happy family. Olivia, on the other hand, was sitting stiffly, scrolling on her phone, jaw clenched. She hadn't looked at me since I arrived. Good. Let her sweat. Morning, I said, sliding into my chair. Mom forced a smile. I hope we can all have a pleasant meal before we leave, no drama. Olivia snorted but didn't look up. Oh, I'd love that, I said sweetly. No drama at all. Just some honest conversation. Mom tensed. Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. But before they could derail me, I pulled out my phone and placed it face up on the table. Actually, Olivia, I said, tilting my head. There's something I wanted to ask you. Finally, she looked up. What? I tapped my screen. Do you remember canceling the dinner reservation? Her face froze. Because, I continued, I was looking through my texts last night and I found this. I turned the phone so they could all see it, the screenshot of her message. The one where she admitted she had canceled it and planned to blame me. Dead. Silence. Olivia's face drained of color. Dad put his newspaper down. Mom gasped. Olivia. Mom's voice was almost small. Olivia blinked like she had just been smacked. That's out of context. Oh, please. I let out a cold laugh. You literally typed that you canceled it and that you were going to pin it on me. In your own words. Mom snatched the phone and read it again, her face crumbling. Olivia. Dad sighed. Deep, heavy, like he had been holding something in for years. Jesus Christ, Olivia. And that? That was when Olivia cracked. Oh, come on, she snapped, slamming her hands on the table. So I canceled one stupid reservation? Big deal. Mom's mouth dropped open. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. It's not just one thing, Olivia. It's years of this. Years of you throwing me under the bus and getting away with it. She laughed, a high fake laugh. Oh, please. You're acting like I'm some kind of villain. You are, I said, voice sharp. You knew you could blame me, and you did it anyway. I looked directly at our parents. And you let her. Dad pinched the bridge of his nose. Mom just stared down at the phone screen, finally at a loss for words. And Olivia? She panicked. You know what? She shoved her chair back, grabbing her bag. You guys are so dramatic. This is why I don't. She stopped herself. Because for once in her life she didn't have an easy out. She had been caught. And this time nobody was making excuses for her. I didn't say another word. I just watched her storm out of the restaurant, humiliated, furious, and for the first time ever completely exposed. And it was glorious. Olivia stormed out of the restaurant, but for the first time ever, nobody ran after her. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not even me. We just sat there in silence, the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on the table like a physical force. Mom looked shaken. Dad just looked tired. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching them process it. I wasn't lying, I said finally, my voice quieter now that the storm had passed. I never have been. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. I know. That threw me for a second. You know. He nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I think. I've always known. I just didn't want to deal with it. I stared at him. You mean you let her do this? For years. He looked away, but he didn't deny it. Mom still hadn't said a word. She was staring down at my phone, the text from Olivia still on the screen, like she couldn't believe it was real. She wouldn't really. Mom started, but she sounded uncertain now. I mean, Olivia's always been dramatic. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Dramatic? Mom, she lied. She knew she could pin things on me, and she did it anyway, because you let her. Mom's lip trembled. She canceled the dinner, blamed me, and watched you all believe her without question. I continued, my voice sharper than I intended. And it's not just that. It's everything. It's always been everything. I didn't even realize how emotional I was until my throat started burning. I swallowed it down, forcing myself to breathe. For a long moment no one spoke. And then Dad sighed again, looking straight at me. You're right, he said. I blinked. What? He sat forward, hands clasped on the table. You're right, Madison. We let her get away with too much. For too long. That was not what I had expected him to say. Mom finally looked up, her expression strange. A mix of guilt, sadness, and something that almost looked like regret. I never meant to make you feel like you didn't matter, she said softly. Olivia always needed more from us. I let out a slow breath. No, she wanted more. And you gave it to her. At my expense. Mom swallowed hard, nodding slightly. I see that now. It should have felt like a victory, hearing them admit it. But all I felt was exhausted. Because even if they finally saw it, that didn't change the years of damage Olivia had done. And speaking of Olivia, her return was loud. The restaurant door swung open, and she marched back to our table, her face furious. Oh, so that's it? She snapped, crossing her arms. You guys are just gonna side with Madison now? Mom flinched. Dad just exhaled slowly. Olivia, Mom started, but Olivia cut her off. No, I don't want to hear it, she hissed. I make one mistake and suddenly I'm the bad guy? Are you serious? I stared at her, disbelieving. One mistake. She turned on me, glaring. Oh, shut up, Madison. You love this, don't you? I tilted my head. You mean accountability? Yeah, I kinda do. Her jaw clenched. You've always been jealous of me. That made me laugh. An actual laugh. Oh, Olivia. I don't want to be you. I pity you. Her nostrils flared. You. Enough, Dad said suddenly, his voice firm. Olivia's mouth snapped shut. I'm tired of this, he continued, looking between us. Madison's right. We've let this go on for too long. And it stops now. For the first time in my entire life, Olivia looked genuinely shocked. Mom hesitated but then nodded. Sweetheart, we love you, she said gently. But you can't keep doing this. I could see Olivia's world cracking. The realization that she wasn't getting away with it this time. She shook her head, stepping back. Wow. So I guess I'm just what? The villain now. I shrugged. If the shoe fits. Her face turned red. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "You guys are pathetic." And with that, she turned on her heel and stormed out, for real this time. The second she was gone, the tension at the table broke. I let out a slow breath, leaning back in my chair. Dad rubbed his face, looking like he had just aged 10 years. Mom actually looked like she might cry. "I didn't realize," she murmured. "I didn't." I sighed. "You did. You just didn't want to." She didn't argue. And for the first time, I felt something I never thought I'd feel with my parents. I felt hurt. It didn't erase everything. It didn't fix anything overnight. But for once, Olivia didn't win. And that was enough. It's been a few weeks since the vacation, and let me tell you, things are different. For the first time in my life, Olivia isn't the untouchable golden child. And me? I'm no longer the family scapegoat. But let's rewind a bit. After Olivia stormed out of that final breakfast, things got awkward. Mom kept wringing her hands like she wanted to call her, but for once she didn't. Dad, who had spent most of my life in blissful silence, actually pulled me aside before we left. "I'm sorry," he said. Just that. And it should have meant something, right? A lifetime of silence and now an apology? But all I could think was, why did it take you this long? I just nodded, too drained to say much else. When we got home, Olivia went radio silent. Not that I was complaining, but my parents, they tried to go back to normal. Mom called a few times, acting like the whole thing had blown over, like Olivia would eventually come around. I wasn't interested. Because here's the thing. I meant what I said at that breakfast. I was done. Done being the one they blamed. Done letting Olivia walk all over me. Done pretending like any of it was okay. And the first real test? A family group chat message from Mom, 2 weeks after the trip. "Mom, we're planning a little family dinner next weekend. Let's put all the stress behind us and just enjoy a nice night together." Red heart. Oh hell no. For the first time ever I said no. Me, I'm going to sit this one out. Hope you have a great time. The second I hit send, my stomach twisted out of habit. I was so used to being expected to just go along with it. But then something amazing happened. Dad responded with a simple, "Understood. Hope to see you soon." Mom? Oh, she tried. "Mom, are you sure, sweetheart? Olivia's been in a bad place since the trip. She's been really quiet. I think she feels awful about everything. In the past, that would have worked. I would have felt bad, caved, shown up. Not this time. Me, that's between Olivia and her conscience. I'm not responsible for fixing it." No response. And honestly, that felt better than any apology could. I started applying this mindset to everything. At work, I stopped taking on extra tasks just because I felt like I had to. With friends, I cut off the ones who only called me when they needed something. In my personal life, I finally prioritized myself. Turns out, when you stop carrying the weight of other people's problems, you can actually breathe. Olivia, of course, couldn't handle it. She tried calling once, and when I didn't pick up, she left a dramatic voicemail. "You know, Madison, it's really sad how you're playing the victim and freezing me out. Whatever, I guess you love making me the bad guy. Enjoy being miserable." I didn't respond, because she was wrong. I'm not miserable. For the first time in my life, I'm free.